Welcome to Chapter 3. This week we're going to look at the universal characteristics of being a human. Things that as human beings we all have. That we all have characteristics because we're human beings that we cannot get rid of. But we would like to. We would like to be no bodies. To not have a body that makes us have needs or limits or feelings. To just be kind of a head on a stick and live out of our mind. We're going to do an exercise that points to our limits and helps us to understand how to manage those limits. Hello again, here we are. Today, we're just going to talk about what it means to be human. You know, from the time of the garden, we wanted to be more than human. We always wanted to be more than we are. Not constrained by the fact of our humanness. And so today we're going to look at what that is. What is it that traps us in being human? You know, we have a saying around our place that humans are human and nothing more, and God is God and nothing less. And so to really remember that. But the first thing we did when we realized the creature that we are, we covered ourselves. And so we're looking at what did we cover? So if you look at what a human being looks like, I am seriously an artist. I just want y'all to see. This is amazing. So it's not what we don't want to be. We don't want to be limited by one of these things. We want to be a no body. Because as long as we have a body, there are certain things that are going to apply to us that are restrictive and limiting. So number one is we are mortal. And again, as we mentioned earlier, death is the greatest way to see what denial looks like in human beings, because we can think about living forever, but we can't make our body live forever. But we always think we have more time. We're always going to do a little more. And we live a lot like we are going to be here tomorrow. How many things did you put off to do tomorrow that may never get done? You know, I mean, because we don't know about tomorrow. You know, in Scripture they talk about the guy who wants to build the bigger barn, and God says, "Don't worry, don't bother. You're not going to be here," you know, because you know this is very temporary, and so we look at but we're all going to go through that process. And so death is something that we have a really hard time accepting. In fact, in our culture, we've removed both birth and death from the home. And so we've made it so it doesn't exist. So people just kind of show up and then they disappear. You know, it's kind of like, okay. I think we're coming back to letting things happen at home again, but we're mortal. The other thing that happens because we're humans is we're limited. And what that really means, in the way you hear about it mostly, is boundaries. We have boundaries. And, you know, when our kids are born, they don't know they have boundaries. I mean, when babies are born, they just are, you know, and so you see the babies, we think they're so cute. And they're so sweet, and they're so innocent, but they're actually not. You know, they are selfish, greedy, narcissistic, uncaring little things. You know, they don't care whether you're sick. They don't care whether you're asleep. They don't care whether you're tired. They don't care whether you're going out. They will still poop in their pants. They want what they want when they want it, and they let you know it. And so as time goes by, one of the assignments that parents have is to teach little king baby or queen baby that they do not run the show, that they are not the most important person around. So so you begin to see at age about 4 to 6 months, you'll see that little kid start to look at their hand, you know, and they start to move it, and they start to get, I have some control over that thing. You know, I can make it do stuff. I can even make it pick stuff up and bring it to me. And so they learn that, and then they begin to eat their foot, and woo, that hurt, you know, when I bit that thing. So they begin to learn that they have a beginning and an end, and then they figure this terrible thing. I can move my hand, but I can't move yours. There's a me, but there's a not me. And that is not a popular idea. And so they begin to try to bring everything into the me of me as possible. And so at 1.5, 2 years old, what happens when you tell a child no? Tantrums, a 2-year-old temper tantrum. That is the existential cry that we are not God. That is the existential cry of I'm not God. And some people never get beyond that. I mean, how many of us know somebody that yells and screams when they don't get their way? We become that 2-year-old again, that is protesting at not being in charge of everything. And so the limits and boundaries, there are two kinds of boundaries. And the one is boundaries that are God-given. There are things, because we're human, that we cannot do. We have certain limits. In other words, you can't stay young. No matter what you do, no matter how many anti-aging products you happen to find, if you hang out long enough, you'll be old and wrinkled. Like me, you do not have a choice. Another thing, we can't fly. We can't go without food and sleep. There are things that we just cannot do. And God made those boundaries, and no matter how much you try, you cannot go beyond those boundaries for very long. Because life just won't work that way. You can't put alcohol and other drugs in your body and function normally. You can do it a little while, but you can't do it over time. So you have God-given boundaries. Then you have choice boundaries within the God-given boundaries. The biggest choice boundaries we have are space and time. I can choose where I spend my time, the space that I'm in, and I can choose how I spend my time. So those are boundaries that I can have. One that is a God-given boundary is I cannot make another person be who I wish they were. I cannot control another person's behavior. And so that becomes a God-given boundaries. But we can, within our choice boundaries, we can choose how we treat that person. We can choose some things. So boundaries are a very important thing to look at, to recognize. If I have 10 acres and I don't know which one's mine, I need some fence posts. Otherwise, I'll be planting my roses on your yard and you'll be throwing your garbage in mine. It's like, so we need to know where we end and someone else begins. And so that the closer you get to somebody, the harder that is to figure out, because the more of your time and space overlap. And so choices become much bigger in those spaces. The other thing is stress. Stress is most of the time, trying to do more than your God-given boundaries allow you to do. So, everybody pick up your pillow. I'm going to just show you what I mean. So, Joy, if you would come up here and bring your fluffy white pillow. Joy is an amazing woman. She is a serious Christian. You would not believe. She can do anything, and she loves people. She would just be there. She's got such a servant's heart. So I need to go to the airport, Joy. Would you please take me? I will be on time. I will never miss my plane if I'm depending on Joy. She's got me. So y'all go ahead. You can come up and bring her your problems, your issues. Tell her what you want her to do.
Wash my clothes.
She will have them crispy clean. She is so good at it. Go ahead. Tell her what you want.
Can you take my son to piano?
She would be glad to. She would even teach him for you. I mean, she is good at that. Go ahead. You can give it to her. She can handle it. What a woman.
Because I need to go out with my friends.
Oh.
I can't find anybody else.
She would love to keep your children. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 absolutely. I mean, there's no way that she is going to fail. Oh, my goodness. Her kid just ran in the road. I don't know what you're doing. I mean, she trusted you. She trusted you with her child. Oh, my goodness. Good, you got him out, right? Go ahead. You can give her stuff. Go ahead. Give her stuff.
I would love for you to bring my girls to gymnastics.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
I could really use a day off if you could just pick up some of that paper.
How does she do it? How does she do it? Oh, my goodness.
I'm going on a making peace retreat this weekend. Would you feed my chickens?
Oh, and Brandy's too. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness. You can drop. Yeah.
Take care of
oh my
me
goodness.
For me, would you?
I think she's done. I missed my plane. Her chicken starved to death. The children got run over. I mean, it's like, we thought we could depend on you.
You can't.
No, you can't sit down yet. It's not time to sit down yet. Come back. So, the point here is, how did that feel?
Exhausting and stressful.
Nobody asked her to do anything unreasonable. But the point is that because she's limited, she can only manage so much, even simple things. So the tendency is to build. Now what I would do is I would let it build. Then I'd know I was going to drop them. So I would just throw them all down and move. And then I'd build because I could not say no. It was all or nothing. And the all or nothing lifestyle is really self-defeating over time. So that's it. The other thing that happens in here, let's say, hold a couple of them just a second for me. Okay. Now let's say that Brandy is your daughter. So Brandy, come on down. And Brandy has her pillow. And one of the things that Brandy sees is that her mama is stressed out. Her mama can't really manage much more, maybe one pillow more you can manage. No, I think we'll just let you stay with two. Anyway, but Brandy sees her mama is too stressed out. So one of the things that Brandy will often do as a child is, number one, she'll try to help. She'll try to help her mama because children know that you can't. She won't actually give it to you because that'll make her feel that important. So you just put your hand to help her balance. So, and then the other thing Brandy will do is she will not give her pillow. She will not, because she doesn't want to overstress her. And so she'll hold on to her stuff. I can remember my daughter trying to tell me that she was unhappy and I'm doing the best I can. I think it was the last time she tried to talk to me, because she didn't want to add her burden to my burden. And that is something that you see a lot. So as long as your daughter's here, you can manage a lot of stuff. But then Chris comes along. Come on down. And Chris wants to run off into the sunset with Brandy. You are now seeing the birth of the monster-in-law. because Chris has become the other person. She ain't no man good enough for baby girl. because she can't leave without you feeling anxiety, without you being overburdened, without you needing her. So she is going to kind of criticize you. And one of the things you're going to do is you're going to see what's happening here. And you're going to say, why are we doing this? Why are we letting... And then where it really gets to be a big problem is when the kids come along. Are you going to let her treat your grandchildren, your children, the way she treated you?
Right.
And so that becomes a real do legacy kind of a thing. So, y'all get that? Mm-hmm. This can be passed down from generation to generation. And the expectation is that if you were, say, her son, that you would understand that we have to take care of her. In the way that we have to take care of her.
Don't ask questions.
And she would be calling the shots. You know, so you never get to behave as an adult in that situation. It just do on down. Okay, so Joy, you can sit down.
Okay.
I know you must be tired of holding all those
I am
pillows.
very tired.
We want to relieve your stress. And Chris, you can sit down.
Okay.
And let's say that I would like to delegate some of my pillows. I'm really tired of carrying all these pillows. And Brandy is really a good person, and she's willing to do some stuff with me. So I say, you know, Brandy, can you help me cook dinner? Brandy, that's not the way you cook. That's not the way you set the table. That ain't the way you cut those potatoes up. Can't you do anything? I'll do it myself. One of the things you'll see is the more controlling and perfectionistic you are, the harder it's going to be to truly let go of the pillow, because when you delegate, you have to let go. And she gets to do it the way she wants to do it. So that becomes a problem. And this is one of the places that you end up stacking up, because you're not willing to have somebody do things that don't look like you would do them. So there you go. All that being said, thank you guys. So recognizing our limits becomes a very important part of living in relationship. It becomes a very important part of really looking at not trying to absorb other people's strengths so you can do more than you can really do, you know. So limits. If you're a human being, you have those, recognizing them and operating with not just within your God-given boundaries, but also exercising with margin in your God-given boundaries. So when life happens unexpectedly, you can have some room, some space, you know, not to be all stressed out. The next thing that comes in there is life is full of pain and suffering. I think sometimes we read too many fairy tales. You know, so you go through all this kind of stuff. And somebody was saying earlier, you know, Cinderella had to scrub floors until Prince Charming came along, and so Snow White couldn't even wake up. You know, I mean, and then they rode happily off into the sunset when the Prince came along. And that's an old country song that has a refrain to it. I don't even know who sang it, but it was this woman. She's got all these dishes piled up, and she's got this dirty floor, and all these kids running around. Her husband sitting there on television drinking a beer, and the refrain is, "Hey Cinderella, does a shoe fit you now?" But life is full of pain and suffering, and happily ever after into the sunset does not happen in this life. It is something that happens in the next life. If you are alive now in one of these things, you are going to hurt. You're going to have losses. You're going to have pain and suffering. And it's not because God's out to get you. It's just because we live in a broken world, and that's just the way it is. And that's the penalty of having to live in one of these things. You know, and so, you know, pain and suffering is a part of life. The passion of Christ is the suffering of Christ. And I think the hardest thing in all of life is to keep your heart open and soft. Because the tendency is to close down and close up around it and try to protect it from getting hurt, rather than to open to what you got to go through and allow God to help you walk through it. But pain and suffering is just a part of our existence. And I think it gets worse as you get old. So another part is that we are needy. By the way, Jesus showed us how to go through all of this. He showed us what a human being needs to look like. He showed us that he conquered death. Jesus showed us that. Jesus had great boundaries. And sometimes in the church we get all mixed up about what die to self means. Die to self just means die to yourself as God. It's like get in your own skin. I mean, it's like, and it's because you die to yourself, you'll be dying, you'll be dead, you won't be able to do anything. But Jesus had great boundaries. He said no to people. He said it's not time for this or time for that. He said certain people couldn't go with him. He said if you want to follow me, I invite you to do that. This is the way, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So you can come with me. But he didn't say you do whatever you please and I'll be here. I mean, he said I'll be here, but you got to stop doing whatever you please before you'll see me. So Jesus definitely showed us about pain and suffering. Somebody said that the cross is the picture of what we do to ourselves and others, and resurrection is a picture of what God does for us. And we are needy. And Jesus showed us how to be needy. He walked in community. He went off by himself, to pray, but most of his walk was in community. He had his best friend John. He had his 3 best friends, Peter, James, and John, and they got to see more and hear more than the other disciples. They got to go to the Mount of Transfiguration. They got to go further into the garden. So, and then he had his home group, his 12, and he talked straight to them. And then he had his followers that took care of him. And then he had people that he healed. And he had people that he didn't know, and people that didn't like him, and people that killed him. But it was kind of like an onion. And one of the things to really look at is that we need each other. We are not made. The human animal is one of the most dependent creatures ever. We have about a 7-year dependency period that we cannot survive without somebody taking care of us. It's one of the longest of any other creature. Because we need to get it that we are not by ourselves, and we can't be by ourselves. So we need to look at that, and to really know that we are not going to please everybody. And we get, sometimes part of our survival stuff is to try to please everybody. And, somebody gave me a really good hint one time. It was a 20-40-20 rule. 20% of the people you meet aren't going to like you. They're just different than you. 60% of the people you meet aren't going to care. Their life's already full of other things. They're not going to notice you. And another 20% you can hang out with at least for a season. And what we do is we respond so much more to the 20% who don't like us. So often I'll hear somebody say, well, I came to the church and somebody there was nasty to me, so I left the church. You left the church. So you rejected 3,999 people because one person was bad to you. So you became what you hated 3,999 times in reaction to one person. So we look at the people who don't like us, and spend a lot of time and energy on them. So now, I was like, okay, you don't like me? You belong to that 20%. You don't want to hang out? You're in the 60%. I'm looking for my 20. I'm looking for the people I can hang with. So, and I know that they're just going to be people like me that need each other. That are with each other. And another thing about being a person is that, and it's kind of scary since we're so needy, is that we are in this body alone. No one else can be in your body, and you are not the center of anybody else's life. We are We are alone in our body, which is one of the reasons I really love that Jesus is with us all the time, because we're never alone. But as far as another person, by the time y'all get to be as old as me, if you're so blessed, then you will find that there's not going to be a whole lot of people at your funeral that were also at your birth. Everybody that grew me up is gone. You know, it's like it becomes more and more of a thing to hear about friends that I have. They're gone, you know, because ultimately we go through it alone. So the only person you're going to look at the mirror at every day of your whole life is you. And so, you know, that is a big thing. But being needy and alone can be kind of scary, you know, sometimes. Another thing about being a person is we're stuck in the present. No matter what you do, you cannot get out of right now. You know, God does not love you yesterday. He does not love you tomorrow. He loves you right now. And so He's in yesterday and He's in tomorrow, but we are stuck in the present. So if we want to know that we're receiving God's love right now, we have to be where we are and keep our head and body in the same place. You know, when your head and your body start separating from each other, you know, you get into trouble. So God loves us right now, right here. And there isn't an if only land. You know, I mean, if only land is in our imagination. There's a man that had a horse and he had a son. And one day he was poor and all the villagers said, you know, you need to sell your horse. And he said no. And so the horse ran away. And so the village was like, you're poor, you're going to die, your horse is gone, da-da-da-da-da, this is terrible, this is terrible. And the old man said, we don't know this is terrible. All I know today is that my horse has run away and I'm a poor man. So a couple of days later, the horse comes back and he brings lots of other horses. And the man says, this is wonderful, your horse is back. And the old man says, we don't know this is wonderful. All I know today is my horse is back, he's brought lots of friends, and I'm a rich man. So down the road, the son falls off the horse and breaks his back, and now he's a cripple. And the villagers say, this is terrible, your son is a cripple. And the old man says, we don't know this is terrible. All I know today is that my son has fallen off the horse and he's a cripple. So a few days later, the country goes to war, and all the other men's sons have to go to war, but his son doesn't have to go because he's a cripple. And the villagers say, this is wonderful. The old man says, we don't know this is wonderful. All I know today is that my son is a cripple and he didn't have to go to war. And I think that's what God wants from us. He just wants us to be where we are, not to judge the situation as good or bad, just to allow ourselves to be where we are and accept the situation. I've told people I'm trying to get the word problem out of my vocabulary now and change it to opportunity. I don't think God brings us to problems, He brings us to opportunities. And we have an opportunity anywhere we are to grow stronger and closer to God, or we have an opportunity to become an angry, bitter victim. But He brings us to opportunities, but He brings us in the present. Choose today who you will serve. Choose love and life today, or you'll never choose it. Every day is going to be today. So being present is a really important thing. When my grandson was real little, he loved to go with me. And when I get ready to go, he'd say, Andrew, go, Mom. And he would go get his little jacket, and every once in a while I would take him. And when I was putting his jacket on, he'd just start to giggle. And he would just giggle. And he would giggle all the way out the car and all the way out the door to the car and in the car and out the driveway and down the road. Andrew had no idea where he was going. Yeah, I could have been taking him to the dog pound. But all he knew was he was going with me. And I think that's what Jesus wants from us. All we need to know is we're going wherever it is we're going with Jesus. And He'll be there as long as we stay in the present and don't run off into our imagination. God gave us this crazy ability, and I don't know why He did it, to image in, to imagine. and we image in relationships we've never been in, situations we've never been in, and then we worry and we get frantic about situations that never happened. Mark Twain said one time, I think it was Mark Twain, but then somebody else said it wasn't, it was somebody else, said, you know, I've been in horrible situations in my life, 95% of which never happened, you know, and I think that is so true of us. The last thing that we are, see all these things we have to have because we're human, is we have emotions. Emotions are energy in motion. They are body responses. No one makes you mad. You generate anger as a response to something someone said or did or some situation you happen to be in. So we don't, you know, they're just body responses. And they have a message in them, you know, but emotions, if your feelings, if your emotions are your God, and we live in a country that says if I feel good, I am good, and the most common one thing people say to me when they come into my office and they're getting ready to do something stupid that will hurt everybody in their life, including them, the biggest one thing I hear is, I'm just not happy. And it's like, what is your point? Anybody who is happy all the time is drunk, drugged, crazy, or lying. You know, life does not come in happy all the time. And so emotions are just feelings. They're just energy in motion. And they do give you a message. And, you know, fear says there's something dangerous out there. You're perceiving danger. It clicks. Anger is the other response to perceived danger. It's like, it clicks. What'd you say? Come on. You know. Or, what was that? It's a click. They're good emotions to pay attention to because they usually take us a step back from relationship. And those are the things we feel are losing control. Guilt, again, is something you do wrong. Shame has 3 kinds of it: natural, imposed, and moral. And for imposed shame, we give it back. For moral shame, we repent. It's like we go in the courtroom and we tell the judge the worst story, and he says, you're guilty, you did it, and I'm sentencing you to a lifetime of shame. And then Jesus walks in the back door and he says, excuse me, sir, I'm here to take that punishment. I'm taking all of that guilt and shame. That person is free to go. He didn't say you're free to be on parole. He didn't say you're free to be on probation. He said you are free to go. One of the things we don't embrace is that freedom. We still walk as if we need to walk in guilt and shame. You know, and we don't. So that is there. So all of those things. What happens very often if you're born into some families where you can't exist as you are, if you say no to something, if you have a limit, then you're shamed. You know, if you hurt, you're shamed because you become a problem to somebody. If you have a need, you're shamed. You're weak. You're not okay. If you have fear, if you have guilt, or anger, then you get shamed. And so it ends up with your whole being shamed. So you become a walking bucket of shame for being a human being. We need to reclaim our human being. We need to reclaim the human being that we are. In fact, you can tell where somebody needs to work for what they don't have. I do what I want. We need to find your limits. Because, you know, I don't need anybody. I'm independent. Really? You know, who made your clothes? You know, who made the cloth that made your clothes? I'm worried. I can't get over the past. You're trying to live in the future or in the past. You're not living in your present. We need to fix that. Ain't you scared of nothing? You should be. I never get angry. I'm kind, caring, loving nuns. I'm a good Christian. Yeah, you're passive aggressive. You're fixing his toast but burning it. You know? So everything gets shamed, and then we become ashamed of just existing. And so we try to begin to hide, and we're going to look at what that looks like to hide in the next segment.